everyone, and welcome to the Human Design Podcast with me, your host, Emma Dunwoody. I'm a qualified master coach and human behaviour specialist, as well as being a qualified human design coach. And I work with clients every single day to answer the big questions. Who am I? Why am I here? And what is my purpose? I also assist them to transition from the person they think they should be to the person they really are on the inside. I teach people how to actually live their design instead of just knowing it. And if this is something that you want to do too, well, stay tuned or reach out for private coaching or Human Design Unpacks, where I show you exactly how to live your design. Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. And of course, it is that time again for the transits episode. And before we dive in, we're going to speak to the incredible Liz Zamorsky all about January. What have the cards got to tell us about this incredible new year we're about to jump into?
I am so excited as usual because the cards that came out for January tell this tale that mastery is on offer. So while we're usually stepping into the new year and kind of dipping our toes in and thinking, oh, I'm just going to ease in, that's great. Take your time, catch your breath, but know that what you're working toward is really braiding up all of these loose ends and stepping into your power in a whole new way. Boom, starting right as we get into 2023. So you're being called to really step away from the noise so you can hear the path forward. And this is a really neat transition from where we've been taught, like you need to see the path or find the path. And the animal that came through when I was tapping into these energies with the cards was none other than the bat, which sounds so funny, but see, I keep using hearing and sound words, but the bat, we say that it can see in the dark, but it's because it's using its powers of echolocation, where it's sending out its sound and then it's listening as it reflects back to them to see, where am I, what's going on around me, and what's the best way forward. And so you're being called to really, like I said, step away from the noise of the crowd and start sending out your signal and allowing it to reflect back to you where exactly you are, because that's how you're going to know how far along your path you are or where your next step is coming up. So hearing and the sense of hearing and your sense of echolocation, that superpower within you, that's really coming in so strongly. And this is going to manifest differently for everyone. But the one red thread that goes through all of this is that it's bringing in wholeness. We talked about this on the year podcast for 2023, is really this energy of bringing in all of the parts to create the whole. And we get to the end of January, we get to the end of these transits, and there's victory. There is mastery. It's mastery of thought, mastery of path, mastery of location in the world. Find your space, allow it to come to you, create some silence around you so that way you can hear the path forward and then step into your mastery in a whole new way.
Oh my God, that sounds super freaking exciting. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Liz Zamorsky. If anyone wants to work with this beautiful, amazing human who, as I said, I literally have a session with her every single month, then you can follow the links in the show notes. And she has her retreat coming up this year. It was a huge hit last year. I know a number of my community went and had a blast. And we're actually, as this podcast goes out, you still have time to access the early bird discount, which ends on the 31st of December. Liz, do you want to tell people a little bit about the Homeland Retreat?
Yeah. So the Motherland Retreat is a 6-day immersive experience. We say that it's your summer camp style spiritual retreat where you come to this small island in the west of Sweden, where from the moment you step off the plane, we just take care of everything for you. We take care of your transportation, your accommodation. We have a private chef who helps design the menu with us based on this land. So you're really not only absorbing it by being in the woods with us and being in the activities, but you're also ingesting and consuming the nourishment of the land through Private Chef George. We have sound healing, dry needling, osteopaths on call. We have woods walks, lawn games, a midsummer celebration, a maypole. It's just so fun. You'll feel like you're 20 years younger and 10 years wiser at the end of the 6 days. And we would love to have you join us.
Oh my God, it sounds like so much fun. So if that's something that you sounds exciting to you, please follow the links in the show notes. So get in quickly because that discount ends at the end of December. Thanks so much, Liz. And off we go into the Transits podcast. Hey, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Human Design Podcast. Well, it's just about to be a whole new year when you listen to this. And I tell you what, I'm pretty pumped and excited for 2023. And, you know, like by this time, you've had Christmas and you're starting to look forward to this next year. So it's time for the transits. Let's talk transits. Welcome, Jenni.
Hi, Emma. Hi, little transit team.
So excited. So let's get into it. Are we gonna head into December first? Are we gonna review December? What are we gonna do, Jen?
Yeah, let's. I mean, we're recording this kind of halfway through December, so we've got a couple of weeks of observations to share, I think. And in terms of what I've felt, it's been an interesting month so far. I feel like we spoke last time on the December Transits podcast. We were talking about the global conditioning channels, the 3635, which is being activated by Mars and Neptune, the 4426, which is being activated across the center of the body graph twice in the month, and I think it's active while we're recording, and the influence that they're having on us. And this, personally, what I'm feeling is this deep change. It's basically, I mean, if I think about 3635, the two, like in its simplest form, it's deep change. And it feels kind of weird and different in here, in my body mind. And that's kind of the feedback that I'm getting from people around me as well. This sense that there's an uncertainty, but it's kind of okay. That people are sensing in their body this feeling like, not entirely sure where I'm going anymore. And there's the depending on how invested you are in the mind or not, the mind, of course, trying to jump in and create some certainty. And I heard this analogy from, I can't remember where I heard it, but someone was talking about how when, say you're on a massive ship, like a cruise liner, cruising along in one direction, you can see the landmass that you're heading for. And there's a sense of certainty in that, like, we're on this ship, there's forward motion, and I can see where we're going. And this person who was describing this moment in time feels like the cruise ship is turning and we're not entirely sure where we're going anymore. And it's, I think, in allowing the uncertainty of where we're going, we're opening ourselves to a new possibility. There's like this feeling that we're changed, we've been changed, there is a change process going on, and that means that we can't for sure say what we want anymore or what it is, where it is that we're headed anymore. That's kind of what's coming up quite a lot in client sessions, coming up in me. I'm kind of surprising myself by what I think we even spoke about this last time, what I'm into, what I'm not into. There's just this feeling in me of, I'm not sure. I'm kind of okay with being not sure, but at least if we as a humanity are going through a period of I don't really know where we're going, then at least we're not going where we thought we were going, which was death and destruction.
Yeah.
You know, it's that feeling like we kind of all thought we were headed for this precipice / apocalypse, and then better to be in this I'm not actually sure if we are kind of state. So that's kind of how I'm experiencing that feeling of deep emotional transformation, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. And just to sort of respond to what you're saying, I love hearing what you just said, because I feel like, you know, I've that's been really present within me, I think, for a long period of time. However, the piece that I really resonate with is definitely like in December, I'm like, yeah, I'm different. It's different. What's it? Not sure what it is, but it's different. And even like when I'm, you know, my team, we're looking at 2023, like, wow, like we are really doing things differently. And a bit like what you said, like we don't know exactly what that's going to look like at the end. However, we know it's really important. It's going to be really powerful. We are absolutely following our design. So there is this huge level of uncertainty, and that's good because, like you say, like we're in the experiment. We know we're on the right path. We're not really sure what that end zone looks like. But for me, I really know how it feels. And I feel like December already has been like the change in me. There's been some massive fundamental changes. And it's one of the things that I've noticed is it's my frequency, and my frequency's really shifted from being busy and fast and, you know, this kind of like go, go, go energy to being calmer and more grounded and trusting in the unknown, like trusting self, trusting universe at a whole new level. And I love the way you articulate it, because yeah, I definitely feel that like it's different, it's changed, there's change in me. And it's the change is more about trusting what we don't know and knowing that feeling, that feeling that we have to the future. And I definitely believe that 2023 is going to be a really pivotal year. And depending on where you are frequency wise, you know, it's either going to pivot in a great direction or it could pivot in a more challenging direction, because I do feel like it's going to be, and again, the feedback that I'm getting and the things that I'm hearing, it's like this is going to be a year where we might become more and more conscious of, you know, this split in the timeline, like these two different realities becoming more obvious, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I really do. And I sort of sense that as well. I mean, I've had a little glance forward at the astrology for next year in terms of the transits. And there are some fairly major interesting activations and conjunctions and stuff. I mean, I'll get onto that a little bit at the end, but yeah, it's been, so if we're kind of reviewing December, but like we're already looking forward to next year. And there is that feeling when you're in this period of time where, you know, everything's changing, right? Like you have to change your diary from your 2022 diary to your 2023 diary. I kind of close off my accounts, even though it's not the end of financial year. And there is that sense of putting to bed. So when this podcast goes out, there's kind of already we've been through that process of, we're standing with one foot in one year and one foot in the other year. And I mean, the other thing that I noticed when the channel of surrender was on, this 4426 that goes across from the spleen to the heart, which is basically, the 44 is rooted in the spleen. So that's the awareness of health, well-being and personal survival. And then it's connected to this really strong egoic energy to express what's true for us. And I really noticed in me and around me this strength of communication of what I want, what is correct for me, what is true for me. And I'm undefined solar plexus. I'm usually pretty terrified of conflict with people. I find it very difficult to express my truth if I feel like it is in conflict with someone else's truth. And yet I've been able to kind of stand in that a little bit more while that definition's been on, because I don't usually have heart definition either. So with so much definition in centers that are kind of new to me or not consistent for me, that's been, you know, I always find that really interesting about the transits. Like I get heart definition, I've of course got emotional definition because of this 3536 channel, and it's weird watching myself in a way when I'm like standing up for myself and defying, you know, people say something to me and I challenge it and I'm like, oh wow, very confrontational, Jenni. But it's like it's unusual. It's like I get to try on a different outfit, and I think anyone listening that's not an emotional man gen will recognize this, because, you know, if you're an emotional man gen like you, it's like you're always an emotional man gen. There's nowhere to go from there. Whereas if you're a projector, Sometimes you're a generator, sometimes you're a manifesting generator, sometimes you're an emotional being. It's like we get to play and try on these different energies, and it's interesting. It's like, oh wow, that's what it's like to be in one of these suits. This is interesting.
Yeah, I love that.
I've really been noticing that this month.
Trying on all the other outfits, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously not a reflector, so I don't get to try on a projector outfit because I'm always a projector. But yeah, it is an interesting thing to be in one of these suits, and I was having this conversation literally yesterday with a client about identity and about who we are, and about how the more we can allow ourselves to be a broad spectrum of beings, especially if you're in a design that does experience all the different types, then it's a really empowering thing and a really liberating thing to just be like, who am I today? What is it like in here today? Because I, of course, have been so fixed in the past in an identity sense about who I am and the labels that I put on myself in order to present myself to the world. And it's like there's like a nakedness to it, because I couldn't answer the question of who I am in those moments because I don't really know. I'm basically just experiencing an energy frequency. So I don't know, December's been a very quite deep, quite profound, quite, just really, I don't know, it just feels, I can't really, again, I'm really struggling to put it into like coherent words, but it feels just there's something going on in here that is it's more conscious and more awake and more relaxed about it than it has been for a long time,
Yeah, I love that. I love the relaxed piece too. I definitely resonate with that. I love it. Bring more of that on, far out.
Yeah. So I mean, whether this is just a personal thing or whether this is resonating with other people who are like, yeah, do you know what? I'm down with that. Like it's weird and it's shifting. I mean, of course, I'm experiencing people who don't necessarily have this level of self-inquiry as part of their life freaking out about it, of course. Of course, there's people who don't do a lot of journaling and following, the journey that their body's going through, just panicking about the fact that they're changing so much and they don't know what to do about it. But in here, in my life, I feel like, oh, okay, hi, you're new around here, new person inside me. This is interesting.
I love it. And I suppose the other thing just to say is like, the reflection itself is probably really helpful and supportive for reflectors as well. Like just hearing another experience of what it is like to feel like your energy does fundamentally change from day to day. And, at the end of the day, like our identity is something that we create through the mind. And I think the more that we do our experiment and we surrender, like we do get to that place where that uncertainty that you talk about, like that's part of it, like being okay with, I know who I am. And it's kind of like that thing that I would say, like if someone asks me like, what is your purpose? I'll give you 50 different answers. But if you ask me, am I on purpose? I'm like, yep, 100% I am on purpose. And I feel like that's kind of the same thing, it's going through this journey of there is just a resonance, and the more we can trust the feeling of being, the frequency of being ourselves, and that's always changing as well, but I really love that. I love that idea of, being able to let go of the mind created identity, which we all have because it's a part of our unconscious mind, which is 95% of our behavior. And the more that we let go of it and we just trust that feeling, because I know for me this year, it's definitely been more focused on the frequency, like the observer, like what exactly is that? What does it feel like? What's going on in there? And probably similar to you, like that real reflection. And yeah, I feel like this is also something that's so powerful with human design, that we can actually become more aware, but also familiar with our own frequency. And that frequency gives us that, what's the word? I don't know if it's certainty or confidence, but just like, oh, that's me. And that's so much truer than any identity that our mind can create,
Yeah, it's like that wordless place that we rest inside ourselves is home, you know, and it's like everything else changes around us, the way we're behaving, the way we're feeling, it's all changing around us, and yet there is a place to rest inside that feels very much like coming home to your best mate. That's how I experience it, you know.
Yeah, me too. Well said.
So the final observation on December, you know, I go to the cinema quite a lot. I really enjoy. We've got a new like a independent cinema that's opened up near us, and I love going to the cinema. And the two blockbuster, I thought this was interesting. The two blockbuster movies that have been released in December, which is basically Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and the new Avatar. In both of them, it's all about this previously hidden underwater civilization and this deep. There's a crisis at home, wherever at home is for them, and they go and take refuge underwater. And I'm like, with Neptune in gate 36, I'm like, that is a very interesting kind of theme in the kind of collective movie zeitgeist.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Very good. Like, and it's the double whammy, isn't it? Like the 36 emotion and water. Like it's all like,
and Neptune, like god of the
exactly.
sea. It's like,
oh my God, I love it.
So I was just like, oh, we're all taking refuge underwater now, are we? That's interesting. Interesting timing.
And then for me, like when you say that, I'm like, yeah. So, you know, what's the metaphor? And it's like, for me, it's, oh, so we're becoming comfortable with our emotions. We're taking refuge in the way we feel. Well, this is going to be good, because then all of a sudden people can realize they can change the way they feel, and listen to the way they feel, you know. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, in Wakanda Forever, it's like she goes underwater and hides in this society that like lives underwater in the Pacific, and it's more beautiful. That she was like terrified of it in the beginning, and then she goes in and it's more beautiful than she could ever have imagined. And I think that's such a perfect metaphor for the richness of our emotional depth, you know. When we're terrified of it, most of us, and then when we actually start swimming down there, we're like, wow. I mean, it's different, but wow.
Oh, I love that. And I totally resonate with that. I love it. And now I have to go to the movies. Where am I going to fit that in?
I don't know. We'll try and fit it in when you're in London.
Yeah, it sounds great.
All right. So just to move into kind of this, again, bridging between December and January, Mars in its retrograde period, because this is kind of like the big astrological moment that we're in, is this kind of prolonged Mars retrograde. And it is currently in 35. It's the planet that's connecting the 35 to the 36 and really bringing this energy of change to the world, you know, into our actions and into our sense of ourselves. And of course, defining the whole planet emotionally. But on December 22nd, so in about a week or so from when we're recording, Mars is moving, Mars retrograde moves it back into gate 16. And so if you're looking at a body graph, or you can imagine a body graph, you have the two gates on the collective circuitry on either side of the throat. So if you're looking at the throat, it's the left and right side uppermost. 35 is the energy that so both of these streams that come from the root to the throat around the outside are basically almost about, like, they're kind of perfectionist in their tendency. They want to perfect something, and the right-hand side, this 35-36, wants to perfect the human emotional experience. It's like, I want to try something new. I want to see what happens through it. I want to go through a deep emotional experience, and I ideally want to bring people along with me, so it's a shared collective experience, so that we can then like have a profound collective emotional experience, and that's going to basically somehow expand or improve our experience of what it's like to be an emotional human. So that's kind of where we're at the time of recording. When this podcast goes out, Mars is going to be in gate 16, which is on the other side. And it's a different kind of perfection. It's like what we think of traditionally as perfectionism. It's that sense of taking logical steps to make something better for the collective, for the good of everyone. And it's, if you think about where it originates, the fuel for this channel, gate 58, which is the gate of joy, which we do get defined by the sun over the Christmas period, between Christmas and New Year. it travels through the gate 18, which is the gate of seeing the problem, the flaws, like the energy to see what could be corrected. And then the 48, which is the depth of skill to be able to do something about it. So when we come into this Mars retrograde through 16, I think we're going to see a lot more, rather than this desire to have a new experience, we're going to have this enthusiasm for developing a skill. So I think one of the ways that we, and certainly, I mean, this is one of my, the 4816 is one of my channels. I think it's, do you have 16? I can't remember.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. It's actually my design earth. So big energy for me.
Yeah, of course, with the cross of planning. So it's this energy that's really enthusiastic about correction and not so much about emotional depth. It's much more about being willing to take the necessary steps to make something better. It's that real logical energy of, actually, I see how this could be better, and actually it just takes a bit of energy or effort from my part to put the steps in place so that this is more efficient, this is better for everyone. It's that kind of energy. So we talked about this on our mastermind call this week, right? Like several of us with channels, prominent channels or gates in this circuitry, that find ourselves over perfectionist with ourselves, and this voice that I'd identified that I really I've struggled with in the past, and I mean, it still has a tendency to be a negative influence, if you like. And it's the voice that says, why isn't this better? Why aren't I better? Why aren't they better? Why aren't we collectively better? And it's impatient. It wants us to be better than we are now. Like it doesn't seem to have a sense of timing, as in this patient understanding that all things will change in time. It's just this kind of impatient, overly perfectionist, unrealistic energy that's like, oh, I should be better by now. And it's kind of denying the process that we go through to be better, if you like. I'm putting better kind of in air quotes. So so that's from not from mid-December all the way through to early February, that energy, because it's kind of the peak of the retrograde. So Mars comes out of its retrograde in that gate, in gate 16.
I think that's beautiful, because there's so much to learn from that, right? Because if it's, you know, we're talking about Mars and that criticism, I'm sure you're just about to go into more of this, but I love that, because instantly I'm like, oh, well, okay, well, if we're not turning it inward in a critical or judgmental way, how are we using it? And instantly, because it's so prominent in my chart, like it's that enthusiasm to learn something new and then go and share it. You know, I love that. But back to you. I'm sure you've got more.
Well, no, it's exactly that. I mean, that's exactly what I'm sort of saying, is that rather than just, I mean, there is in myself, and this is probably not true for everyone, but I feel sometimes a certain sense of laziness around this. You know, it's like I can see what could be better, but sometimes there's a sense of can't be bothered. You know, like, oh God, is it always me? Do I have to? Is it always have to be me that has to be doing this? Like, wouldn't it be great if everyone else was upskilling as rapidly as I am? That kind of feeling. But with the whole planet experiencing this through a Mars retrograde, I'm wondering if it might just be that there is a lot more direct action. And
I love that.
Some of that might be slightly unskillful, like in the same way that I'm slightly unskillful in being emotionally defined, because it's not usual for me. It might be that there's some unskillful expressions of this if it's a new energy for people. But yeah, I just feel like people will, that enthusiasm that we often get at the beginning of the year in January for something new, it's been kind of being supported by this Mars retrograde, saying here's a big piece of active energy in the gate of upskilling, in the gate of the enthusiastic willingness to try something new or further develop something that you're already into.
Oh, I love that. And I think it's also, you know, globally, I feel like we're also at that tipping point. I feel like we're actually at this place in the world where a lot of people are starting to see the world differently. Maybe it's a way that, and it's not right, wrong, good or bad. But maybe, you know, there's a larger percentage of people that are starting to see the world differently. So for me, like, that's like, oh, wow. I wonder if it's part of this coming together and sharing stories of the last few years at Christmas time, and people putting pieces together and going, hang on a second, that's not what my blah, blah, blah told me. Like, that's interesting. Like, that also comes up for me as well. Maybe it's a time to even, follow your nose, follow that enthusiasm. What is it that you want to learn more about? And where do you want to think more for yourself? Or what is the thing you want to upskill? And maybe it's even that weird thing that you don't want to share with anybody. Like, maybe it's that thing. And maybe it's human design if you're someone out there who's still in that corporate world. And it doesn't mean that you have to start a business. It's like, just follow your curiosity, that beautiful energy of curiosity.
Yeah, and I think that it's a good point that you're making in terms of the particularly with human design. I think my observation of people that succeed in this kind of world that we're in, who actually are best at it, are people that just couldn't help themselves. And this is a bit like the 4816 is the kind of like energy that you do it for free. You just can't help yourself. Like, you're so into it, whatever it is, that you would, even if you're having to do something else to earn money, you'd still do this anyway. That's my 100%. Observation. Because I like I said, I have the 4816 channel, and it's part of the stream of taste. And that taste, what that's referring to, is the thing that you particularly have a taste for, as in you just so into it. And it might be that no one in your current circle is into it at all, but you just can't help yourself because you're so enthusiastic about getting involved in it. So it's that kind of energy that is, I feel like you kind of being focused on.
Completely described me. I totally resonate with that. The other piece for me, the last 2 years, although I've done learning, I haven't been voraciously learning like I have in the past, and that's definitely something for me that's coming back. It's having a revival in 2023. And that's exactly what you were talking about. It's that energy of just, oh my God, I just love this. I want to learn more. I want to experience something. And then I need to tell, being a line 5, I need to tell everybody whatever it is. And I don't even know what it's going to be yet, but it's going to be good. I'm telling you that much.
Yeah. And it is, this is collective sharing circuitry. So it is all about the sharing. It's almost like we're in the beginning stages, we're just doing it because we can't help ourselves. But then there does come this very strong compulsion to share it with people. And I have been the world's most annoying person to be around when I'm deep in these states, because it's like, I really have to hold my tongue. I've learned, because I was such a bore, I was like, it's like I'm like a preacher on a soapbox, when I get really into something. So it's also that energy, like, let me tell you. And everyone's like, I'm really not interested.
Yep. Been there, far out.
Yeah. So that's kind of what's happening with the Mars retrograde at the moment. And then I want to talk about the nodes next. So we are in the middle of a node transit that's relatively short. It's 2 months, and we're kind of in the second half of it in January. That kind of generally nodal transits, and the nodes, in case you don't know what the nodes are, because they're not actual things, they're points. So there are intersections between the orbit of the Earth and the orbit of the Moon. So if you imagine a oval shape, say that's the orbit of the Earth, and you just imagine the Earth going around that orbit, and then round us, there's the Moon going round and round and round us. And when the Moon intersects the orbit of the Earth, that's where the nodes are. So it's like the Earth is moving in a direction through its orbit, and then the nodes are moving with us, but they intersect our orbital trajectory. And that's where the nodes are. So it's said to provide a trajectory for us. So the south node, which is where we've come from, provides our historical past, or the energy that we're kind of done with. And then the north node provides the kind of where we're moving towards. So at the moment, the south node is in gate 44. This is the gate in the spleen that I just mentioned, part of the channel of surrender. Its function is this instinctual awareness of what keeps us healthy, and how we're able to tell other people about that, remind other people, transmit to other people, hey, don't forget, blah, blah, blah. Like, don't forget we need money in order to buy food, in order to not die. That kind of like really basic instinctual awareness of what we need to stay healthy and it's tribal circuitry. So it's basically an instinct for who or what is good for us, or who or what was bad for us.
I feel like that's a really big topic at the moment.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So the trick with this energy, and again, I have 44 defined twice in my design, and it's been a mystery gate for me. It's one of those, you know, when you've got gates in your chart where you're like, I don't get it. Like, I just don't understand. It's felt like such a mystery to me. And so I've been really, in the last year, just really focused on it. And it feels to me like one of the most complex gates. Like the more layers I go in, the more complex it seems to get.
Well, it's the oldest gate, isn't it? So that would make sense as well. You know, like that would make, like there really is so many freaking layers to it. It's interesting you say that as well, because I feel like it's one of those gates that there's not actually that much written about it. It's like, and every time, you know, even with the gene keys, I'm like, and then, you know, like it's kind of like, and so for me, I've always felt like there's more, but I don't know why I feel that way. So it really resonates that you'd say that.
Yeah, it's almost like it's like in a hall of mirrors and I'm looking at its reflection, but I can't actually see the essence of it. It's that kind of energy. But the way that so if we look at the one of the keynotes, which I've mentioned before on this podcast, it's this entry. A successful interaction is based on an absence of preconditions. And so what it's saying is, even though this is a gate of instinctive memory, which when we experience something negatively as humans, we remember it at a cellular level and we try and avoid it happening again in the future. And it's tribal, so it's mainly about interactions with others. So the way I experience it is this very strong, deep, instinctual fear of other human beings, because of all the times I've perceived that I've been hurt by other human beings in the past. And then I'm afraid that that's going to happen again in the future. So it's this kind of caution of meeting people, basically. I don't necessarily go into social interactions with an open heart and an open like, hi, let's be friends. I'm like, what do you want? Can I trust you? Let me sniff you, because it's very much about, you know, the sense of smell. And there are some people, places, situations that I smell and I'm like, no, I don't like the smell of that, and I back away. And it's that, I think what that manifests as mentally is this kind of social anxiety, but it can be trusted in real life. Like tribal energy is, I need to be in a room with you. I don't actually know if I can trust you till I can smell you. So it manifests in my mental landscape as this kind of social mental anxiety, or it has in the past, certainly. But if we get mentally locked into that mental storyline, we lose the ability to enter into situations with an open heart, because we're already putting a barrier in place, right? And actually that dulls our splenic awareness, which is essential to this gate. So I think the South Node in this gate is reminding us of the importance of having a clear splenic awareness, of being actually chill and entering into situations reasonably, but not over fearfully, open to the possibility that it could be a good interaction, but aware enough, sensorily aware enough to know if someone's not for you, and the willingness to just be like, yeah, this person's not for me, or this situation or whatever is not for me. So I think it's like ramping up our splenic awareness, which is our, like we say, our oldest, deepest sense of animal instincts, basically.
Yeah, of survival. And I think that I think the other thing for me that the 44 is really all about is like, you know, I always imagine it as like, is this going to move us? Is this going to move us forward, or is this going to be the death of us? You know, and I think the 44 has that real energy of, And especially if it's kind of this governing energy, it's a time where you want to be really honest. Like, what is your body? What's the feedback that your body's giving you? Is there something that you're doing, being, eating, consuming, people that you're hanging out with? Because it is definitely a survival energy. And I kind of hear some of the, I know Karen Curry Parker talks about, thriving. And through this energy, it's also about thriving. However, I really think in most cases, it's about surviving. So it's that really deep animalistic, like, pay attention to your body, because it's really giving you massive clues about what's good and what's not good for you. And ultimately that's our journey, right? We have to come back to the body and start to really trust it. So, and I always, I know I talk about it a lot on this podcast, but I think it's such a great example in a funny, easy way to understand the spleen. Like, I often say that Justin eats like a pregnant lady, and the reason he does that is because he trusts his spleen. Like, his spleen tells him what to eat and when to eat it. And I kind of feel like that's almost the metaphor of this energy, is like, it's not going to make sense because the spleen isn't here to make sense. It's in the moment. It's giving you a heads up, an intuitive here. And if you ignore it, it's not coming back, like, you want to be just tuning in to that subtle energy, because, in the world today, there are so many things that aren't good for us, even though we're told that they are good for us, like most of the food in the supermarket, right? So I reckon that's great thing to just be watching out for. Like, what is my body telling me? Because it knows what I need to survive and obviously ultimately thrive.
And we tend to be kind of apologetic about it. You know what I mean?
Oh, amen to that. I couldn't agree more with that. Could not agree more with that. People are way too apologetic about it.
Yeah. And it's like, the split, especially, I mean, obviously Justin's a splenic projector as well. And for any splenic authorities, whether they're projectors or, manifestors, what you're experiencing is this sense of, this is life or death. This is actually life or death for me.
That's what the 44, and that's what the 44 is telling you, right? Like, it is that basic instinct. Yeah.
Yeah. And so to be unapologetically in touch with, I'm sorry, I can't be here. And I've done that before. I walk into a restaurant, we've booked a table, I'll walk in and I'll be like, I can't be here. Sorry, we have to leave. I'm out. There's something about this place that just doesn't smell right. I need to leave. And I have to be strong enough to be apologetic about it. And the people around me have to be willing to go along with it, because it's, I'm not going to sit somewhere where my body is telling me it's not safe for me.
Yeah. And I think that this is a really good lesson. So I kind of want to just sit with this for a little bit, because I feel like this is the world that we're creating right now. And this is the reality of diversity. We talk about with human design, it's the science of differentiation. It's about us all being individuals. But what does that really mean? That really means that we have to say, no, thank you. No, I don't consume that. That's not for me. All power to anyone else, but it's just my choice. And I feel like this is going to be one of the most important themes the closer we get to the new paradigm, that we need to be able to say. And I mean, I suppose I know this because I felt like a fish out of water, like I don't fit in for a really long time. Like, especially Justin's family now, they're all like, yeah, they're fine. But for years we ate weird, we did weird things. And I remember like being like, well, that's just us. But it's hard, it's hard to say, no, I won't eat that, or no, I don't want to do that, or no, I don't want to put that on my body or in my body. And this is a time where we're not, number one, let's not make anyone wrong for the choices that they make, because everyone's choices are their own. That's the point. But we also need to be courageous enough, like you just said, Jen, like to say, this is a no from me. And sometimes, well, most of the time, it's really uncomfortable, especially where we are in the world right now, because we're trying so hard to be different and be individualistic so that we can serve the collective. But our conditioning says, no, you do what you're told when you're told to do it. And I think that this is a time that it's not going to be easy, but we just champion everyone just to say, that's not for me. Thank you, but I'm going to pass.
Yeah. And that that training, the socializing to not rock the boat, like it's very deep and very strong. And sometimes we will have to compromise, you know, we have to take a call on it, really. It's like sometimes even if my body's saying, oh God, no, just sometimes you just say, oh, come on, mate, we're just gonna have to suck it up, because
well, you know, that's being human, isn't it? There's always swings and roundabouts, there's always you know, compromise. But I do think this is going to become a bigger and bigger thing. And I think the more that we can, you know, because lots of people talk about standing in your own truth, and then behind closed doors, they're doing something completely different. And one thing I really want to champion is all of us telling our truth and holding space for everybody else's truth that's completely different to theirs. You know, like, I'm going to be me and you're going to be you, and this is going to be great. But that transition's bumpy.
We get shit. I mean, you're going to get shit for it, basically. My observation is, I remember I was feeling a little bit under the weather, and there was a huge family meal booked, and the people had come up from other places around the country, and it was all this thing. And on the morning of it, I was like, this isn't a compromised situation for me. I actually can't go. Like, my spleen is very, very definite. Like, I know when my spleen is really closing the door on something, when I basically get tearful about it, like I cry when I think about doing it, because that's my body going,
I do that
my body
too.
being like, please, no, please, I don't want to go. So, you know, I had to say no, and I didn't go. And then, you know, some of the kids were expecting to see me, and they were like, where's Jenni? Oh, she's not here. And some of the kids had a tantrum because I wasn't there, and then everyone blamed me for it. And I got shit for it for weeks for not going to this thing. But long and short of it, it would have been abandoning myself completely to force myself to go. It wasn't one of those, oh, I just don't fancy it. It was like my body was screaming at me, please God, no. So we might get a bit of shit for it.
And we just, like, I think we want to champion you. You're like, for all of you listening out there, like, it's okay to put boundaries in place, and it's okay to say yes to the things that are correct for you and no to the things that are correct for you, even though it can feel really uncomfortable.
Exactly that. And I mean, also, this is the first spleen gate of many for the South Node. You've got 2 years of spleen gates for the South Node. So
bring on all the fears. Let's do it.
And then in terms of where we're going with this, the North Node in 24. And I do think there's it's really interesting that these two are programming partners, because you have this, like I was saying about the mental fear construct around, you know, when I've had bad experiences in the past, my mind deciding that might happen again, and then trying to stop me from going into similar experiences. So the 24 is about this habitual way of perceiving, or the way that we're making sense of the mystery of life, because it's coming, you know, it's on the other end of the channel from the 61. So it's the answer to the question, really, the great mystery question. The 24 is the energy to start to theorize and hypothesize around making rational explanations for what it is that we perceive. That's the function of that gate, and it's called the return of, and it goes over something over and over and over again. It keeps going back over it, trying to make sense of it at a mental level. The mental anxiety associated with that energy is that we're never going to know, or we won't, even if we do know, we won't be able to explain what we know, because it eventually needs to go through the 4323 channel to get to this point of clear explanation. So I think both of these gates, the 44 and the 24, contain within them, of course, the seed for transformation from the fear-based shadow pattern into the more healthy or enjoyable aspect of the energy. So what a beautiful partnership, right? The 44, this awareness of the tribal behavioral patterns that we're afraid are going to repeat themselves, and then the 24, which is the ability to return to our assessment of that and make new, updated, potentially more personally truthful meaning out of them. So I think we're in this real space of, what if I was wrong before? What if it's not going to be like that in the future? Just opening the door of possibility to the idea that your fear might turn out to be wrong, and that life might be better than you imagined it was going to be.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Human Design Podcast. I want to share something really amazing with you, and it's actually one of our new Millions of Millionaires sponsors. So to introduce this body graph chart software that we've been using that's been mind-blowing. So I want to welcome the amazing Taylor Dyson, who is my incredible operations manager. Welcome along, Taylor.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. This is actually something that we implemented when?
April.
Yeah.
Of this year.
We were just trialing it out because they'd reached out to us in regards to sponsoring the podcast or something like that, wasn't it? And so it kind of wasn't even on our radar. And we tried it out and we had such low expectations. And then what happened?
Well, I remember sending you a message going, Emma, why are we not using this? Because I was mind blown. You know, we get a lot of requests for stuff like that. And, you know, there's new softwares all the time. And I clicked on it, like you said, with very low expectations. And I started looking through what they can do. And I got so excited. You know, the MG in me was like, oh my God, we have to use this. And I saw the potential of it. And it has delivered more than expected. It's really awesome.
Amazing. Now, before we get into the actual numbers, because I know numbers with Taylor is a thing in our business. She loves to share all the numbers. Let's just tell the listeners exactly who it's for and what it is.
Yeah, so it's a great tool for anyone who uses human design in their business. So if you're a human design reader, a human design coach, or just someone who uses human design in your business, if you incorporate it into whatever you do, it's a way for you to embed an actual human design chart tool into your website. So, you know, if you want someone to get their human design chart, you probably send them to an outside platform somewhere, you know, oh, go to this website, put in your details and get your chart, whatever that platform might be. There's a couple big ones. And what's cool about this is that it allows you to put that tool on your own website and it's yours. So when someone comes and, you know, puts their information into your website, they get their chart, and then you can hook it up to your email list, to your newsletter. You can have it linked to your own content. You can customize the reports afterwards that they get, you know, so it's your own descriptions of what, you know, this type is or this profile. So that's kind of what it is.
Oh my God, I love it. And it's so cool because I actually remember when Jenna Zoe, because it must be the same software that Jenna Zoe used and before anyone else. Yeah, right. And I was always like, wow, her chart looks so beautiful and it's on her website. That's so cool. So yeah, when we started using it, I was like, this is beautiful. I'm really excited that we can do it. But let's talk hard numbers. Like we have had some serious success with this, just adding this to our business. So tell everyone a little bit about the growth that we've experienced through using this.
Yeah, so since implementing it into our website in April, there have been over 4,000 people that have downloaded their chart through the website. And that's unique. That's not, someone who does it twice, because a lot of people, they'll go back because they won't download the PDF or something, or they lost it or misplaced it. That's unique chart downloads. So it's even more for people doing it twice. And it's been really amazing. It's more than tripled the size of the email list. And, you know, you can set up sequences afterwards for people to, give them more information and keep everything in-house.
Yeah. And because one of the really big things for us is obviously human design made simple. So it gives us the opportunity to give our way of teaching human design directly to the people who want it. And I love that. I love that every single person that wants to get their chart, that downloads it, we can then support them on their journey straight away, which is of course what you set up, because you're amazing to make sure that not only do they get their chart, but they also get this support, free content support that helps them as they're new to human design and on their journey. So beautiful. So how do people access this? What's it called? And I know that there's a benefit for listeners of the podcast.
Yes. So you can go to the link in the show notes, or you can go to bodygraphchart.com. And they have been kind enough to give the listeners of the Human Design Podcast a 50% off discount for 12 months, which is huge because it's already inexpensive to begin with. And then the 50% discount is going to put it at $25 a month. That's in US dollars. So wherever you are in the world, it'll be, a little bit different, but 50% off for 12 months. And the code is Human Design Podcast. And we'll put that in the show notes too for everyone. And one of the other things I want to say that's really cool about this chart tool is that it's 100% customizable, and it actually gives Chiron and the 4 arrows, which is what a lot of chart tools don't do that. So that's one thing that a lot of people are drawn to when they go to get our chart from our website is, oh, I can get the arrows because of it, or my Chiron gates.
I love that. It's so cool. So check out the show notes, people. Get on it, because really it is such a powerful and, as Taylor says, inexpensive tool. Like, it paid for itself in the first 2 days, I seem to remember, or first day, I seem to remember. So it's so valuable, and it gives you the opportunity to really build your brand and your communication with your clients. So thank you. Go check it out. I think we could just end the podcast on that, because I think that's the most important, profound thing that we could all contemplate. That's so good. And it's also so not what is being peddled out in all the media as well. You know, I love that. Let's just sit with that. You know, what if life wasn't going to be as fucked up as we thought it was? Like, brilliant. Yeah. What could it be instead? Oh my God, how good is that? That's profound.
Yeah. So yeah, really lovely. I think that what the nodes are activating at the moment. Love it. I mean, it's probably coming up for you in one-to-one sessions. It's definitely coming up for me a lot. You know, the people bringing me their fears and us working through them together to open, because when you're in the fear, it's very, very hard to open the door to the new possibility yourself. It can really help if someone is alongside you going, yeah, but what if it wasn't going to be like that? Like, what if you do say that thing? What if you do express your truth? And what if the other person doesn't react as negatively as you think they're going to? In fact, what if the other person is delighted? What if it's a gift for them? You don't know until you say it.
And as you say that, like, that's actually, like, that energy of the 24 is the purpose, because you're right, we can't see it. We have a thing that we call a boundary condition. Like, we literally set up our mind in a certain way. And it's why, you know, the most important thing about growth is we have to become conscious of what we're unconscious to, so that we can change it. And I feel like this is exactly what you're talking about. And definitely, you know, I've had this morning, so when we're recording this morning, we had one of the HDX hot seats, and it was amazing. And it was just exactly that. It was just it was almost like just perception shift after perception shift. And it was like the whole room would go, they'd refer back to the first person and the second person and the third person and go, so you answered my question on that person and that person. Then you answered something I forgot to even ask on that one. And then now I want to ask this. And it was all this constant, you know, perception change. So I love that. I think it's because that's where the power lies, when we can use our consciousness to perceive the world differently, and then recondition our mind, our thinking patterns to support our real truth.
Yeah. I mean, it's a process, and we definitely need support in it. But once you get into the rhythm of it, it becomes like, I mean, quick, easy, fun. It's like,
I totally agree.
Oh, great. Here's another limiting fear, but that's just blocking my path. Let me just dive into it. So it's just super fun.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, like, there was a point that I got to, and I'm going to say it was probably, and it's not to say that the work is done, because it's never done, but I actually got to a point, I'm going to say probably about 2 years ago, where I was like, fuck, what if there's nothing else I get to work on? And I was genuinely like,
yeah, what then?
Oh, what? No, but now I've got the hang of it. And of course, there's always things to work on.
There's always something.
But yeah, I totally, like, I think that's one of the things when we get to this place where we're starting to really get how to work with ourselves, with God, universe, source, with our soul, with our energy, that it is just a fun game. And it doesn't mean that it's always easy, or it doesn't mean that it's always happy, joy, but it does mean that you're like, woo, here goes a challenge. I've totally got this. Who am I going to be after this? And it's a very different energy.
It is. Yeah. So let's move into the January thing. I mean, we're kind of I've just bridged us gently from one to the other. Because January, in terms of human design, in terms of the new year, for those who don't know this, the new year for human design is on the 22nd of January rather than the 1st of January. So human design is looking at the mandala, the wheel of the year, which, again, for those new to the podcast, you can get on my website, link in the show notes. When you look at the wheel of the year, what human design what the whole thing is based on is the relationship between the 64 gates of the I Ching and the genetic codon, the human genetic codon. And the codon, which is called the start codon, which is the piece of code in a human being that says start something new, is 41. So human design says we don't really get the supportive energy to start something new until the sun moves into the gate 41. So that's why we have the human design Rave New Year, as it's called, on the 22nd of January, because the sun moves into gate 41 on that day. I mean, it might be a little bit either side depending on where you are in the world, but it's around that point. So when you look at again, it's really helpful to look at the wheel of the year, because when you look at the top of the year, the first thing you'll see is the gate 10 at the solstice. So the 10 is the beginning of the last half of the last quarter in the human design year. So we have this process that goes from the solstice, winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, summer in the south, all the way through to just after the new year, when we get into the next G center gate. So what we're always looking at in human design in terms of the transits and the year process is G center to G center gate. So we've got gate 10 at the solstice, which is this very clear instruction energy, if you like, of what's correct behavior for you that will lead you in the direction you need to go in. The G center is always about personal direction and love and moving towards greater love. The 10 is a very individual energy. It's about the love of the self and love of being who you are. And so this theme of loving being who you are then gets 6 root gates and a head gate, basically all pressure gates between this G center gate and the next. So we have this really interesting pressure pot that we start the year with. And it's a process. It's a process of, like, if you think about the root and the gates in the root as these initiating fuels, like a shot of energy. Like, I don't know if people drink coffee in the morning, but it's that like first shot of caffeine. It's that, okay, I'm awake now. Let's go. That root, the adrenalized pressure of the root is that kind of energy. And it's fascinating that we get this ping, 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 ping in the root in this last bit of the year. So the January transits podcast from last year, which is episode 158, in that I go in detail through the gates that lead up to that process from 10 all the way through to 41. And so you can go back and listen to that. I'm going to give 2 sets of journal prompts, one from last year from those gates, which if you go back and listen to that podcast, you'll find the journal prompts in there, but I will also summarize them in the show notes here. But then I've also got a new set of discussion points, if you like, journal prompts.
Beautiful.
Which reflect more, I think, where I'm at now and where I feel like my evolution has taken me in terms of the way that I question things. So there is a process that we go through in human design that kind of gives us this tick, 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 awareness, 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 this energy to be aware of what it is we're actually feeling the pressure for. So I've noticed, I just listened before, yesterday and the day before, I listened to your podcast with Liz.
Yeah.
The 2023 looking forward. And both of you kind of mentioned this feeling like you're almost like ready to go, like that feeling of there's a hitting the ground running kind of energy. And I've looked at, I was like, why might that be? And I looked at the transits, and it's because, I think it's because there's certain planets are ahead of the sun. So when we're talking about human design, we're always talking about this very consistent process. The sun is in a gate for about 6 days consistently every year. It's always the same. It sets the template. But the other planets are also moving through those gates, and Mercury and Venus are ahead of the sun in this process. So in December, we're already starting to go through these gates of the root with Mercury and Venus, and then Mercury is going to retrograde as well over them. So to talk you through the process of these pressure gates and what providing fuel for, or providing the pressure for. We start with, after the gate 10, we start with gate 58, which is the energy, the gate of the joyous, the gate of vitality. It is called the lake in the hexagrams, and it's double lake. So if you think about the lower trigram and the upper trigram, they're both lake, and lake means joyful in the hexagrams. It's the energy of just this calm, still enjoyment. It's reflective. It's like, sitting by a lake, this energy that we all know. It's that calm joyfulness, the real appreciation and enthusiasm. So it's got this energy of a joyful pressure to change something or to move forward. Like I said, we've talked about it a lot, this whole stream of taste. What am I particularly feeling the pressure or the what do I have a taste for changing personally? So we get this this 58 energy that gives us the indication initially of what we might be wanting to improve or change in our lives. Next, the sun moves into 38, and like I said, Mercury and Venus also doing this process. 38 is the next one up, shining a light on what is actually personally meaningful for us. It's an individual circuitry energy. It's grounded by the earth in the gate 39, which is on the other side of the route, the provocation to actually feel what we feel. So we get some awareness or some energy around personal meaning. So we have, what do I want to change at a collective level? What do I think could be better? What am I interested in changing? Then how would that actually have personal meaning for me? Then we get the sun into the gate 54, the gate of ambition. Again, one up, if you're looking at the route, bottom to top on the left, the gate of ambition, which is the fuel to transform something at a tribal level, the energy to make the tribe better, or the group, the family, whatever it is. And that's grounded by the earth in the gate 53, which is the gate of beginnings or development. So this is the energy to start a new cycle. So the sun will be in there from the 6th to the 10th of January, but like I said, we've already had Venus through it, and Mercury is going in, it's been in as well. Then from the 11th to the 16th of January, the sun moves up to the head. It goes into the pressure gate in the middle, this gate 61, which is the gate of inner truth or knowing, the pressure to figure out what you really know. We've already talked about the south node in 24, so the north node in 24, so there will be a channel on there. This is the pressure to figure out what it is you really know. You, not collectively you individually, personally, what do you know? And they're grounded by the energy in the gate 62, the earth in the gate 62, which is the gate of details, but it's also the naming gate. So you might even be able to put a name to what it is that you think you know. Then we come back down into the route. At the other end of that central channel, the sun moves into gate 60, the gate of limitation. This is the 17th to the 21st of January. This is the pulse of an energy that can change or mutate something or not. And it's like a personal limitation. What is it is limited? Okay, so we've been through this process. What do I collectively want to change? What would have personal meaning for me? What's going to have the most meaningful transformation for me in terms of my tribe, my people? What do I think I know? So we get this kind of divine anchoring into God, source, universe, where we're like, what does God have to say about all this? What does my idea of divinity have to say about all this? And then we come all the way back down to the root. What are the actual physical, personal limitations in my life that are going to influence my ability to do this? So this is the process we go through. And like I say, I'm going to provide questions, journal prompts for us to really reflect on this. And it may be that we go through several iterations of this, because we have Venus first, then we have Mercury going through this process, and then Mercury in retrograde, kind of halting the process. So my observation of what we might feel right now in middle of December, of this kind of accelerated awareness of where we're headed, may potentially be kind of reined in a little bit as Mercury goes retrograde back through these gates over the course of the new year. Does it make sense? Am I making sense? I feel like that's
Absolutely.
a lot of information. So gate 10, what's right for me at this time? Gate 58, what am I super delighted about changing or improving on behalf of the collective? Gate 38, what would have personal meaning for me and make me feel like my life has purpose? 54, how would that affect my position within my tribe or my status, and am I okay with that? Because that's one of the interesting things about gate 54, the gate of ambition or drive to materially rise up. If you already have status within your tribe, then you might feel reluctant to let that go. It can be quite challenging to let that go, because you're like, I've achieved so much, I've worked so hard for this, can't believe I'm going to smash it all to pieces and start something new. So there's just this awareness of, am I okay with the fact that these other pressures that are weighing on me may mean that I have to go in a different direction than the one I'm used to. And like, I really noticed that, and I know a lot of people are going through transitions in their careers and all of that kind of stuff. And I just want to acknowledge that it's a really challenging process, because if you've been in a position of status for a while and you're thinking about just binning it and starting from the bottom again, it can be really egoically challenging. So let's just acknowledge.
It's an ego death. It's part of your identity that's taken away. So totally agree. Like, fucking champions, people who are courageous enough to do it. Yeah.
And courageous is 100% the word, right? Like, all change happens at the point of courage. So just to be aware that there is a reflection point in the middle of this. We get all like bigged up, like, yeah, I know what I want to change. Oh, hang on a minute. That means my status is going to change, or that means my position within the tribe is going to change, or that means my ambition is different now. So there's that. Then, like I said, we go up to the head. What divine inspiration is available to me at this time to inform all of this process? Back down to 60. What real world practical limitations need considering? And then we're into 41. What do I most desire? So that process that we go through in this last part of the quarter of mutation is being influenced all the way through December, the end of December and into January.
I love it, because when I'm hearing it, like, what I feel like is, to simplify, it's like the culmination of all the lessons of who you've become through 2022. And that checking in with, well, I can't put it back in the box. Is this going to be okay? Like, then checking in with, God, universe, source, and then being like, okay, it's go time. And I think one of the things, like the 60, I've got a lot of, there were a number of people in my 2.0 mastermind, in the other group, not in your group, in the other group, who had the 60, and just seeing how, how they bought that. The gift is realism, and it's that ability just to really have such a knowing of, it's almost like what rules are bendy, what can be broken, what's true, but actually what's real, what is realistic, and not in an unresourceful, like, like, you need to be realistic, like in a, what do I need? What really is, and the word that I'm being brought to is like, what is the truth of the matter here? So I love that. I think it's really like this culmination of a year that, again, there's been so much change, and it's that pressure to be like, well, am I going to attempt to put it back in the box and pretend like I don't know about it? Or am I going to really lean into this pressure that I'm feeling to change? Because I'm pumped about it. I'm excited about it. I'm just like, my ego's a little bit like, what? Are you going to lose friends over this? Yeah. Can you even do this? And then coming into that 60 culmination of, hey, yeah, I can. I've actually got everything I need within me. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how I'm going to get there. However, I do know that I have everything that I need. And so I love that. I think it's great.
Yeah. And it's interesting, it's not just the sun shining a light on this, that it's, Mercury is the programming agent for humanity, and it communicates or transmits information to us. And then Venus brings beauty and creativity and artistry and love and values and harmony. So there are several influences on this process all the way through.
I love that as well. Like surrendering to that, to the beauty, to the creativity, to the ease, those energies, because we have been through a number of years that change has potentially been perceived as challenging and hard. I love those, that. I
don't know where I put my notes. There they are. I'm just checking the dates for Venus, because I think it might already be in there while we're at time of recording. Venus is in gate 10 now while we're recording. And then she goes through 58, 38, 54, 61 and into 60 by New Year. So by the time you're listening to this, Venus has already been pretty much through the whole process.
Oh, I love that, because it also kind of lifts the energy, because again, I feel like it's energy that it's a cycle that we've been in since 2019, but to have that influence almost with Venus is like, it's just coming from this more, beauty is the word that keeps coming to mind. Like they're bringing more beauty to it. Oh, I love that. And I almost resonate with that. I feel like there's a lot of, I don't know, like I've definitely been experiencing a lot more grace and beauty in my life. So, oh, I love it.
And then I'll give the dates for Mercury retrograde because obviously, because it's important. So it starts it's already kind of entering its pre-retrograde shadow now, but it starts its retrograde on the 29th of December, and that'll be in gate 61. And it ends its retrograde on the 18th of January in gate 58, which will then move it forward through all of the gates again. So it's a time where we back up our computers and we don't get over reliant on our technology because it might be a bit glitchy, and we accept the fact that communication might be sometimes a bit stilted or not as smooth as we might like it, and just ride it.
Exactly. Keep moving forward.
Yeah. And then in terms of like the tail end of this process, Mercury doesn't actually come out of its post-retrograde shadow until mid-February. So we've got this 4-week sun process that I've just described, but actually, like I said, it's already in process with Venus and Mercury in December. It's going to tail off with Mercury into February. So it's like a few kind of false starts before we really get into the groove, or like a few tries at it, a few passes at it, and from different perspectives.
I love that. A few passes at it. I think that's really cool because, you know, if we don't get it the first time, love that.
So it's just layer upon layer of awareness around the newness that we're inviting in. So yeah, so I'll stick all those journal prompts in the show notes for that.
Love it. Are there any that you want to share here?
Well, I've kind of just talked through that process and like, you know, what is the. I've done that bit. I'll put those in the show notes, and then I'll go back to last podcast from last January and take the journal prompts out of that as well.
So good. Love a journal prompt.
I mean, just also to say that on journal prompts, because I've had this, like, I usually love a journal prompt, but I said to you earlier this week, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't want to do any journaling. Like, I'm not vibing with it. So I will also say, if you're not enthused about the idea of journaling on it, don't worry about it. Like, you're swimming in the same neutrino soup that we're all swimming in. So it's happening anyway. It's just whether or not you want to journal on it.
And totally. I feel like it always comes down to strategy and authority. Always. Exactly. And I feel like I dropped so many of these things for a while there because I just was like, oh, wow, I'm doing this because I have to, not because it feels good. So I totally concur with that. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the biggest things that jumps out at me when I look at the January overview is that the planets are everything's going direct. Like we're in full forward motion from, let me check the date, 21st of January. Everything will be direct by that point. So we've been in a lot of retrograde. A lot of the outer planets have been in their long retrogrades. So Mars, like I say, we've talked about Mars retrograde. That will station direct in gate 16.3 on the 12th of January. Mercury will finish its retrograde on the 18th of January. Uranus then will station direct in gate 2.2, where it's been retrograde for a very long time, on the 23rd of January. And that means that all planets will be direct for the first time since April this year, 2022. So it's a sense that the handbrake's off, you know, it's that feeling. I was going to say
full steam ahead.
Whoosh. So it's interesting, right? Uranus stationing direct on the 23rd of January, while the sun is in the start codon.
Wow.
So any areas that we either individually or collectively as a society might have felt held back on, we might now feel that sense of ease in forward motion, like that real sense of flow.
Yeah, I love that.
So that's something that jumps out at me for January. The other thing that I think might be quite significant is Jupiter's movement from gate 25, which again we spoke about last time, this energy of universal love and this abundance of that, this shining a light on this this kind of it's very earthy, it's very shamanic, it's very, you know, connected to love of everything, love of a blade of grass, love of a guitar, love of a sandwich, like whatever. It's really universal love. Just the love of the mundane, if you like, the love of being here in a body doing a human thing. And it's been there, it's been in gate 25 since September. Now it's retrograde is taking it into 17, which is where it was from June to September 2022. So we're going back into 17 in Jupiter. It will be out of 17 in just over a month. So by the 18th of February, it will be done with 25 and 17, like completely for this cycle. So putting that in context, from the beginning of May 2022, Jupiter's only been in 2 gates, these two, 25 and 17. That's 10 months in 2 gates, which is a lot for Jupiter. It usually goes through a gate a month when it's in forward motion. So we've had a good long 10-month period of these 2 energies of opinion and universal love, which feel very different, right?
Yeah.
And then it's coming back through 17. Now, we spoke about this again on our mastermind group from the perspective of the gene keys, this about the shadow state of opinion, the gift of farsightedness, and the city of omniscience. And its trajectory, if you like, is like, when I think about that, and being really opinionated and then omniscience, literally knowing everything, it's like going from a know-it-all, like being, you know, like a proper opinionated know-it-all, to like literally knowing it all, like literally knowing everything. What a fun game.
Sounds good to me.
So, I mean, I'm going to say the fact is, and that's very 17 language, because 2 and 17 are all about facts. The fact is, she says, using the language appropriate to it, is that most of us don't really know anything. As in, we don't really know. We think we know, but we have to acknowledge, you know, whenever you start delving into any of this stuff, whether it's yoga or meditation or plant medicine or just whatever it is, if you have an experience beyond everyday consciousness, you realize that there is a massive perceptual filtering your experience of the life. We all know the saying, you don't see the world how it is, you see the world as you are. And it's this
one of
filter
my
that
favorites.
we're referring to, this perceptual filter, right? Which is telling us that we know stuff, but when we look much deeper into it, we know through the filter.
Yeah.
And unless you've had an experience of life without, maybe not without all of the filter, but with the filter slightly removed, slightly less prominent, then you think very clearly, you think that your opinions are facts. You think that the opinions that you've formed through your perceptual filter are facts. They're true objectively, and they're not. They're true subjectively. They're true for you. And some people listening to this will have had an experience of life with a somewhat reduced filter, and some may not have. And if you have, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, then you might be like, what is she talking about? But there are many ways of experiencing this. And one that I'm sure we've all had is when we fall in love. Like when we really fall, our heart opens so wide and our experience of our day-to-day world transforms completely. We smile at people in the street. We're pretty much skipping. Every day seems like magic. And there's this just wide open change in our perceptual filter, because this is why we love being in love so much as humans, because it temporarily takes down a bit of that fearful, distrustful egoic structure. So I'm sure, even if you've not had, you know, any of these kind of more transcendent experiences, pretty sure everyone knows what it feels like to feel like they're in love with the world. And so what I'm looking at with Jupiter in 17, having just spent so long in 25, it's remembering that our perception is limited currently, and that I'm not suggesting that staying in a state of reduced egoic filter and that state of awareness is practical, because some of those states are incredibly impractical. There's no way you could function in the world in that state permanently. Just nothing would happen. But having had an experience like that, we can reflect on it and say, yes, I see how my perceptual filter is working, and I can see that my opinions are just opinions. Actually, I can see that quite clearly. So I think that we're getting this a real abundance of energy in this gate 17, that we have the potential to kind of transcend opinion.
Yeah. And I think like everything that you're talking about is also really in alignment to understanding the difference between being, heavily conditioned and reconditioned, like what you're really talking about is the direct question is, do you need to be right? Because if you're a person who needs to be right about the things, about your opinions, then this is the shadow aspect, like one of the things you guys would have heard me say before, like beliefs are nothing but convenient assumptions. They're not truths. They're convenient assumptions. Opinions are exactly the same. And I think what you're talking to, Jen, is that if we're really attached to those opinions, then that's when looking through the frame of the gene keys, like we actually lose the ability to express the gift and the acidic states of this energy and really be in it, because we are so stuck to, this is the way it is. And, what you were saying, like there is no, this is the way it is. We live in a quantum reality. This is the way it is doesn't exist, because every single human has a different, version of that. And there's, again, scientifically proven, we live in different dimensions. We now know there's, different timelines. We know that there are all these things going on. So I love the 17. It's a prominent gate in my chart. And I remember when I first read the city, I'm like, wow, because I've experienced that. And it's that curiosity for all, and I'm going to do inverted commas, opinions. So it's just this ability to be not so much what you were talking about, like knowing everything, but just it's like being in the soup of everything, just being curious about everything and not needing to make it right, wrong, good, bad. My opinion's better than someone else's opinion. And yeah, I reckon that this is a great opportunity for us to go, am I a bit attached to that? Like, because if I'm really attached to being right, if I'm really attached to that opinion, then it's a really good clue that we are in our shadow expression. We're in fear because we need to be right. We're afraid of being wrong. And that says so much about us and very little about the people that we're trying to, inverted commas, share our opinion with.
I mean, yeah, it's the capacity of the human organism for having different sensory awarenesses is so vast. Like I remember there's some interesting stories, like as a yoga teacher, people do tell you all kinds of stuff because they are looking for answers, right? So I had this one student years and years ago who came to me to tell me about a God consciousness experience that he'd had, which had lasted for weeks, where he knew himself to be God, and he knew that he could manifest anything instantly, and he could control the behavior of everyone around him. I mean, it was wild what he was describing, like complete omniscience, actual God consciousness, like popped into the acidic state for a period of weeks and then comes out of it and is like, what on earth? Like, because it was weeks, it wasn't just a moment, it was like he was in this state for a long time. And then, really looking into yoga and Buddhism and looking for answers. Another student told me about an experience where she had seen beyond the apparent solidity of reality. Like she was looking at her hand and it broke down into particles, and then everywhere her whole body broke into particles. She looked everywhere she looked was just particles blinking in and out of existence. This is, I can't remember the name of it, but on the Buddhist path, this is one of the main staging points where you actually see reality for what it is, which is waveform collapsing into particle form, collapsing back into waveform, which is what quantum physics tells us is happening. It is possible to perceive that as a human being. And some people have, like I say, these very spontaneous experiences of it. And I'm not, like I say, I'm really not suggesting that we want to be in that state all the time, but it gives us an understanding that what we think is fact, what we think is solid, what we think is completely true is a perceptual filter.
100%.
So I'm interested in the position of Jupiter in this gate. I'm interested to see what it does to opinion and our attachment, like you say, our attachment to opinion. Like, I'm personally kind of bored of watching my mind forming opinions.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
come on. Really? Still doing that, are we?
Yeah. I love it. And I think it's, you know, it's a super important time because, again, like, it's also this opportunity to, I don't know, like, be really willing to change the way you see the world, because really this is how we create it, through our opinions.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I've then had a little look at 2023, and it was really, you know, it was actually really I found this really challenging because I couldn't work out if I was doing it because I wanted to or because I felt like I should. Because I haven't before, really. I haven't looked at the whole year and tried to kind of assume. And I think it's because of what I was saying earlier in the podcast. Like, I'm kind of enjoying being in the state of not knowing and this mystery and just allowing this, like, whatever. But there are some interesting things, so we can maybe talk about them a little bit.
Let's do it.
So, and I mean, again, Jenni pulls out another political hot potato and tries to make it about the transits. So there's Chiron. We haven't talked about Chiron for a very long time. Chiron has been out in gates 51 and 21 since basically just before the conflict in Ukraine. And, you know, these are strong egoic gates. There's the gate of controlling, there's the gate of shock, it can, in its shadow expression, be some pretty competitive, you know, abusive. It can be these energies can be abused because it's coming from a place of egoic fear and this feel like I need to be first, I need to be competitive, I need to be in control, and it's a very contractive kind of energy. I obviously don't know if there's a correlation between the position of Chiron, which is the wounded healer, and it brings the opportunity to heal certain very deep historical patterns. I don't know if there's a correlation between the conflict in Ukraine and these gates, but there's a definite, you know, that's where Chiron's been in these two gates the whole time of this conflict. And speaking of Jupiter moving into 17, where it goes after that is gate 51 and then gate 21. So, sorry, I think which order is it? It's 21 to 51, I think. Let me check. Yeah, 21 and then 51. So gate of control and gate of shock. So there will be a conjunction. There'll be a conjunction between Jupiter and Chiron in gate 21 between mid-February, mid-March. And then they're both moving in, not exactly the same time, but they both go into 51. So there'll be another conjunction between Jupiter and Chiron in 51, end of March, early April. That is quite a lot to my mind in terms of the amount of energy that's being focused on those two gates. It feels to me basically like something's coming to a head at that point of the year.
Yeah.
With Jupiter being conjunct with Chiron. Chiron continues in those gates for at least another year. I think it's into 2024 that it's still going through that process. So that was one of my that looks like a lot.
Yeah, it does look like a lot.
Energies.
And if we think about like the potential of it, what, like, maybe even, because I always think, well, not always, but now because of the Pearl sequence, I think a lot of Jupiter through this prosperity and this kind of this frame. So maybe, and I love what you said, like something comes to a head. So maybe it's going to be some sort of time where, you know, Jupiter's shining a completely different perception on something that Chiron's been just, you know, going over and over and over again. And maybe it is something that we have potential to prosper from. And what we mean by prosper is not necessarily make money from, but to fill our cups from. You know, so in my world, I'm like, that could be a positive thing. That could be really great, you know, and Jupiter is luck and, you know, a pretty positive energy. Like what else? Is there anything else that potential wise it could be bringing? What theme do you reckon?
Well, I mean, my observation of Jupiter is, like you say, it's generally positive. It seems to me that it because it's like, if you think about the planets in order, like we've got Pluto way out there doing its Pluto thing, like just governing the whole order in a really slow way, and then you've got Neptune and Uranus in this kind of dance of the underworld and the like bringing in all this future newness, and then Saturn and Jupiter starting to anchor it into culture. Saturn representing the old order and the way things have been done historically, and then Jupiter representing this abundant, powerful energy, which is, you know, the biggest planet in the solar system, and it's nearest to us in terms of the outer planets. So I think it is a positive influence. I mean, of course, if you follow traditional astrology, there will be certain signs that Jupiter will be most happy in and less happy in. Like there's signs where it feels more comfortable, but in general, my observation of Jupiter is A, it's powerful, but B, it's like it's almost anchoring in this process that's been going on way out there, and it's like it's really, like I say, bringing it to a head. It's like it's really making it real. And it's interesting. If we look at it in terms of Uranus, I mentioned earlier, Uranus is going to go direct in gate 2. Uranus has been in gate 2 for a long time. Jupiter will be going through gate 2 I think it's in its retrograde this year. So again, there's these processes that are happening way out in the outer planets that I feel like Jupiter's just anchoring them in. Into our
I love that.
lived reality.
Because as soon as you say the piece about Uranus, I'm like, wow, gate 2, like, great. Let's talk divine feminine revolution. Bring that shit on. Like a bit of Jupiter, grounding that in. Let's do it.
And then, I mean, in terms of what Saturn's going to do this year, so if we look at 2022, Saturn has been in gates 13, 49, and 30, which if you're looking at the wheel of the year are the first 3, like 13 is the first gate of the first quarter. So Saturn is right at the beginning of the quarter of initiation in its process. 13, the gate of the listener, 49, the gate of revolution of principles, 30, the gate of feeling or desire. Saturn representing the boundaries and the status quo and restrictions and the old order in traditional astrology. In human design, we talk about Saturn as being the judge. And so it's, if you like, we were talking about Jupiter being this benefic, how do you say that word? It brings abundance, it brings something, it like can give you gifts. Jupiter, it's like a Santa Claus kind of figure.
Love it.
Saturn, not like that at all. The only benefit you get
Grinch.
from Saturn it either leaves you alone or it doesn't, is basically what we talk about. Saturn in human design. It's like if you're not living according to your own personal law, it will judge you. Like you will receive judgment from Saturn. If you are living according
100% received a lot of that judgment.
You know, and this is why we have these returns. Like Saturn return is such a big thing, because it's our first Saturn return is this judgment. Are you living according to the correct law for you? I went through a lot of health issues, digestive issues about lifestyle, basically became allergic to alcohol and couldn't party anymore. So like Saturn is the judge, and it's been judging in these gates of 13, 49, and 30. These 13, of course, is in a G. It's related to a deep sense of listening to the stories of humanity. And of course, we've seen a lot more awareness of all of the stories of humanity.
Yeah. And so many stories that have been hidden for hundreds of years, I think, and even thousands of years. I think that's such a massive theme right now.
Yeah. So
and for anyone who hasn't watched Ancient Apocalypse, please go watch it because it's so freaking good.
I haven't.
Oh my God. Haven't you?
No.
Oh my God. I so thought you would have. So Graham Hancock, do you know Graham Hancock?
God, I read Graham Hancock's book, Fingerprints of the Gods, when I was like, I don't know.
I was going to say,
16?
like,
Yeah.
Like that's why
I
I'm so
love that guy.
surprised. You should go freaking watch it. And it's on Netflix. So it's properly
Oh,
like,
great.
yeah. Oh my God. Go.
I'll just
Oh,
make a note of that.
totally blew my mind. I loved it.
Know what I'm doing for the rest of the day?
Yeah, it's so good.
I am actually, the podcast listeners are going to have to bear with me while I make a note. Ancient apocalypse.
So
Okay.
good.
So Saturn's been out there. It's been in 49, which is a tribal emotional gate of revolution of principles. We talked about this, I mean, many podcasts ago, maybe 5 or 6 podcasts ago, in relation to potentially, you know, all this stuff with the abortion laws being overturned and then not overturned and thrown back and forth and all of that kind of stuff. The old order and their sense of revolution of principles and clawing back, hang on, let's go back to the old way, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, I feel like this, I'm just going to just quickly jump in because I feel like this is so important to so many of the conversations we've had today, you know, like going against the grain, saying no when you can't, when you need to say no, like constantly going over that journey that you talked about from the G root center, from the pressure points. Like for me, the pattern that I see is like, it's the culmination of exactly what everything that we've been talking about.
And then if you're looking, like you say, if you're looking at the wheel of the year in this first part of the first quarter, what do we know about that? It's all solar plexus gates. It's the emotional process. So it's been in 49 and 30 in 2022. It's moving on in 2023 to 37 and 55 all year.
Ooh.
So yeah, that was my response. Ooh. So it'll finish up in gate 30 by early March, and then Saturn will move into gate 37 and gate 55, and it's got a retrograde, so it'll be in those gates all year. So what might that reveal? The old order of how family and spirit is perceived or anchored into our culture is being revisited and potentially exposed. Like we've seen the exposition. Yeah, right. These are interesting gates, I think, for Saturn.
I freaking love this. I mean, 37 is obviously my personality sun, and I feel like, oh my God, like the higher expressions of the 37, like bring that shit on. And the 55, I love the 55. And the 55, of course, is what's going to kick us off into the new paradigm as well. So it's such an important energy for us to just experience in our bodies. Like if it's not there all the time, just to experience it. I love it.
Yeah. So I think Saturn's got an interesting journey this year. Neptune, same, staying in gate 36 all year, continuing this deep emotional watery process. It's a long one. So that continues all year with Neptune. And then, like I said, Uranus will finish its transit of gate 2, which is this gate of personal individual direction and receptivity at the beginning of May. Now, Jupiter later in the year, I think it's around July or August, will go into that gate. But Uranus is moving into gate 23. So Uranus, as a reminder of the theme of the planet, it's unusual. Like it sits on its side. Like when you look at images of Uranus, it's like looks like it's on its side because its rings are the other way around, like north to south, top to bottom. It's got loads of unique and kind of unusual qualities. And so it's said to bring this revolution of newness in, this like unexpected, whoa, where did that come from? Oh, we're all doing it like this now, are we? It's that kind of brand new energy. So it's been transiting gate 2 for a very long time, this gate of personal individual direction and receptivity to that. And then at the beginning of May, it's going into 23. So gate 23 is the gate of, we call it the splitting apart in the hexagrams, or assimilation. It's if you look at the throat, it's receiving from the ajna and head through the central channel, and it's the ability to clearly explain our knowing. And when it's called splitting apart, that kind of refers to like when a fruit falls off a tree and hits the ground and the fruit splits off and there's the nut or the kernel in the middle. It's the splitting apart of anything that's inessential in terms of information and just leaving us with the nugget, just leaving us with the nut or the essential part of that in terms of our communication of what we're saying. So you have this, I'm pretty sure you have, do you have 23?
I have the 43 and it's in my design Mars. So it's my core wound in my vocation. So it's a big player for me. Yeah. So
the mental anxiety associated with this is the oh my God, I'm not going to be able to explain what I know clearly so that everyone can get it. And the 23 brings that ability. Now, if you have this as part of your design, part of the process with that is practicing, because it's not always the case that you can always very clearly, simply explain exactly what it is that you know. You have to practice and refine that. You have to play it out a few times. So it's like, what in terms of the big picture, in terms of Uranus in 23, what might that do? It might be that we are seeing a stripping away of inessential methods of communication, or a reinvention of the way that we communicate in terms of our simplicity or our
I love that
preciseness.
I'm just reading this book at the moment. It's called Golden, The Power of Silence. And yeah, like, it's a brilliant book, far out. And it's, you know, they're talking about our addiction to noise, internal and external. And I love that, like, breaking away from the inessential communication. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, it really could be beautiful.
Because that's the gap, right, that I'm always banging on about. The thing that you've been basically studying for most of your life, the freaking gap. Like, that's where we want to be, right? That's what it's all about. That's where all the wisdom comes in.
So so that's my little glance ahead at 2023. I mean, it's not apart from this Jupiter Chiron conjunction, I think it looks pretty sweet as far as I can tell.
I love that. So tell me, it was Saturn that's in 37 and 55.
Yes.
So one of the things that I wanted to share at the time it came up, so I'm going to share it now because it's still here, is one of the greatest lessons of my life is, you know, the shadow of the 37 is feeling unsupported. So with Saturn in there, like, if you allow yourself to be unsupported, and it could be anything, it could be like help with the kids, or it could be mental health, or it could be financial stability, or it could be just sharing what's going on in your internal reality. Like, that would be one thing that I would say to you, because if the judge is going to come down on you hard if you're not asking for support, and if you're not receiving support, like, that's just going to make things more challenging, you know. And I think that that's something that, just from my own personal experience, because the higher expressions of the 37 will feel like we are being held by the divine mother. You know, it's this beautiful, beautiful energy. Like, tenderness is the Siddhic state. And I think with the 55, again, like, it's this energy of authenticity, being true to ourselves and allowing ourselves, because of course it's moody. So the judge might, you know, we might get judged for judging ourselves for our emotions, for either, you know, trying to shut them down, not letting ourselves express them, not letting ourselves just be like, yeah, no, I'm just going to shut myself in my room today, and that's okay. So just being maybe conscious of those sort of things as well. Because I think that both these gates in their higher expressions have got so much beauty in them. I mean, they all do. But I feel like they're also, but the 37 is a prominent energy that we're coming out of in this paradigm. And I feel like there's so much of the 37, the shadow of the 37, that we know really, really deeply entrenched in our culture, but not necessarily the higher expressions. The higher expressions of the 37, I do think we're definitely seeing now more predominantly, like this balance between the masculine and the feminine, this ability to be nurtured and taken care of, the power, real power as opposed to force, like all of these things that are starting to arise. And I think, like, with the 55 as well, it's a great opportunity for us this year to be like, what does freedom mean to me? What is it? If I'm being myself, if I'm free, what does that mean to me? And playing in those energies, because you're going to hit the bumper rails. You know, if Saturn's in 55 and you hit the bumper rails, like, oh, look, I'm not really being honest with myself. You're going to, you know, maybe we're going to notice it a little bit more. I'm not sure. I just feel like these are potentially really beautiful energies, but just sort of looking out for the consequences of those things. Good way to just help ourselves.
Well, they're global conditioning agents, these outer planets. Saturn, in terms of, I mean, it's great that you bring up support and freedom, because that it's going to be playing out at a global level as well as the personal level, but it's a global player, you know. And so a global player in the gate that questions our freedom could be interesting.
Yeah.
It's really the old order of denying freedom to individuals to maintain control may be a big theme for the year. But it's Saturn. It's not, you know, it's the old order. It's on the way out. So we may just see it like the lack of freedom or the lack of support is likely to be the biggest theme of the year. Like in terms of the negative news cycle that we're seeing out there, that's probably what we're going to be seeing in that.
Yeah.
But just to know that it's on its way out. It's like the last thrash, you know. It's like the energy of Saturn is, like we say, it's the judge.
Yeah.
If we believe that support and freedom are essential to optimal human functioning, Saturn's going to come in and judge anywhere that's not playing by those rules. So
bring that on, I say.
Yeah. So that's all I have for you this time around.
Wow. Well, thank you. Far out. It was brilliant. And I feel really excited. I suppose when this actually goes to air, I'm going to be feeling even more excited because I will be on my holiday. And you know what? I do want to say, and I'm sure Jen probably wants to share a similar message. I just want to say a massive, massive, massive thank you to every single one of you that has taken the time to listen to this podcast at any point over the last few years. I feel very grateful that I have the opportunity to create a platform that gives you guys what you need to really discover that power, that greatness that lies within you, and have the courage to let go of who you thought you should be and really step into who you actually came here to be. And I believe that that journey is the journey that is going to help us all steward in this new paradigm and a world that, you know, as Jen mentioned earlier, a world of so much better than we thought it could be, of kindness, of possibility, of nurturing, of, you know, really taking care of each other and the planet. And we couldn't do what we do without you. So I just want to say a massive thank you to each and every one of you listening, because you're fucking awesome. I'm so grateful for you, and I believe in you and your journey. So go out there and just be your most beautiful self, most imperfectly beautiful self. So thank you so, so, so much.
Yeah, ditto. I second everything that Emma said. And I also really want to support everyone from my heart. Like, I'm sitting here kind of sending heart vibes out through the ether, through the airwaves, through the podcast download, hoping that you can all feel how much you are held in my heart at all times, really.
Beautiful. Again, I totally agree. So thank you everyone for being with us this year. And we so look forward to the journey of 2023 with you. Make sure that if you haven't already taken some time off, put your feet up, take some time off, because as you just heard, we're going to hit the ground running early. So put your feet up, enjoy yourselves. And again, thank you, thank you, thank you. We just adore you. We love you so much. So have a great break. And yeah, we'll be back soon. Bye for now.
Thanks everyone for being here all the way to the end of the podcast. I hope you got lots of value out of it. I certainly had a lot of fun doing it. Could I please ask that you share this podcast with friends if you found it valuable? And also, bonus points, could you leave a review for me as well on Apple? It would be greatly appreciated. If at any point you would like to be on the podcast, or you've got questions that you'd like me to discuss on the podcast, by all means get on my socials and DM me. Everything you need is there in the show notes. Have an awesome day. Bye for now.